Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and we have a pretty impressive replay for you today. At numerous points throughout the course of this video, I guarantee you're going to be staring at the screen and asking yourself the question, why is this happening? That's not how this is supposed to work. And for that, you can blame Tank Bullet Iron here, in the Japanese premium Tier 8 battleship, the Key. Although you're probably supposed to pronounce it Key or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, the Key. It's a premium Tier 8 battleship with a very snazzy camouflage scheme that often gets written off as a sort of bargain basement version of the Amagi. And that's not an unfair assessment. The Key class of battleships were designed as a follow-on to the Amagi class of fast battlecruisers, but the whole design was cancelled as a result of the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922. First, let's take a look at the similarities between the Key and the Amagi, because they're both Tier 8 Japanese battleships, and they are very, very similar. The guns are identical, physically at least. It's got exactly the same number, 10, of these 410mm guns, arranged in 5 double-barreled turrets. Unfortunately for the Key, these guns take 1 second longer to reload than the same guns found on the Amagi. They have shorter range than the same guns found on the Amagi, and they are substantially less accurate. They have a terrible Sigma rating of 1.7, lowest amongst any Tier 7 battleships. They are, not to put too fine a point on it, not that good, despite the impressive amount of potential damage that a full broadside of all 10 of these guns can inflict. They don't hit often enough and accurately enough to realise that potential. On the other hand, the Key does have fairly impressive anti-aircraft firepower for a Japanese battleship, as the enemy cargo is finding out the hard way, although to be completely fair, those 6 aircraft shot down were not just as a result of Tank Bullet Iron's anti-aircraft guns. The Karga's aircraft were flying into a crossfire between his and the neighbouring Massachusetts anti-aircraft guns, so it's not really surprising that they only managed to get 1 strike off. The reason for the distinctly un-Japanese anti-aircraft firepower found on the Key is that rather than the 127mm turrets that are found on the Amagi, the Key has a whole bunch of much more rapid-firing 100mm anti-aircraft guns, comprising the long-range battery, lots and lots and lots of 40mm anti-aircraft guns comprising the mid-range battery, while the short-range battery consists of the usual, not particularly good Japanese 25mm. But even though the Japanese 25mm batteries that comprise the majority of the short-range anti-aircraft guns found on most Japanese battleships and cruisers are not particularly good, she does have a lot of them. Also, of course, it didn't really hurt that he was being attacked by a Karga, and the Karga's party trick is that it gets lots and lots and lots of aircraft, but they're lower tier, so they're easier to shoot down. Despite the fact that the Key was designed as an up-armoured improvement over the Amagi, the armour isn't actually all that good. I know, Japanese battleship with bad armour. What a surprise. Technically, the broadside belt is thicker, and she pays for that thicker broadside armour weight by being slower than the Amagi too. Although she's by no means a slow battleship. We're not talking Colorado with New Mexico here, but she's not quite as fast as the Amagi, upon which she's based. And all that extra armour doesn't actually give her that much more protection, mostly because her turtleback Citadel armour protection is only 22mm thick, which means it can and will be overmatched by the guns of any battleship that she is likely to face, with the exception of the Scharnhorst, and can even be overmatched by the guns of some of the cruisers that she's likely to face. And yes, Alaska, Stalingrad, we're looking at you here. Adding to this the fact that her torpedo protection system is absolute garbage, giving her about half of the torpedo damage reduction that the Amagi enjoys, and the ship's starting to look pretty vulnerable. Definitely not the kind of battleship that enjoys getting in close and brawling, particularly when there are torpedoes around. And in light of the commander skill rework, you would imagine that this ship is a prime candidate for a Deadeye build. The skill that's got everybody hot and bothered, and all of the cool battleship kids are running, which increases the accuracy of your guns by 10% if there are no visible enemy ships within your non-firing surface detectability range. Unfortunately, the Key doesn't really benefit from that skill as much as most, because as well as having the worst accuracy of any Tier 8 battleship, she's also got the worst surface detection range of any Tier 8 battleship. With a base surface detection range, unmodded and unskilled, of nearly 18 kilometers. So, in light of the commander skill rework, what exactly is a Key captain to do? You can't hang around on the map border with all the rest of the cool battleship kids and take advantage of the Deadeye skill. Well, you can, but it's not going to be terribly effective in this ship. And you certainly, with that absolutely terrible torpedo protection system and the fact that you're a Japanese battleship, don't want to be getting up close and brawling. It's a Japanese battleship, it's not a brawler. None of them are. Well, with the possible exception of the Mikasa, but that's only Tier 2. The Key does have torpedoes, however. 2 triple launchers, 1 on each side. And they're not bad. In fact, they're pretty damn good, despite the fact that you do only get 3 of them on each side. The firing arcs are incredibly good, comparable to the extremely good firing arcs that you find on the torpedo launchers on the German Tier 6 Graf Spee. Unlike the torpedoes that you find on the Graf Spee, which have an 8-kilometer range, 2 kilometers better than the standard torpedoes that adorn most German warships, the Key's torpedoes go 1 better and have a range of 10 kilometers. They are pretty good. But we're still stuck here with a whole bunch of skill points and no real idea of where to put them. How about a secondary build? No, stop laughing, I'm serious. Yeah, okay, the only Japanese battleship you set up with a secondary build for the lols is the Mikasa at Tier 2. There's a very good reason why you don't set up any other Japanese battleship with a secondary build unless you're doing it for the memes or you're an idiot. And that was before the commander skill rework. Post rework, secondary builds even on ships that were suited to it, like the Bismarck, the Frederick the Great, the Massachusetts, are pretty ineffective post-commander rework, since the skill that buffed the accuracy of those secondaries and made the builds viable and fun got nerfed by nearly 50%. This has to be a kill. Even the Key's guns couldn't miss a broadside in North Carolina at that kind of range. Yep, got him. So, we still haven't answered the question, how exactly do you spec a Key captain post-commander skill rework? Well, if you tank bullet iron, you say, screw the numbers, and you go for a secondary brawling build. And no, I'm not recommending this. Definitely not recommending this. It doesn't make sense. The numbers don't lie. The ship is not suited to it. But he's done it anyway. Not only that, he is taking a battleship down the middle in Two Brothers, although to be fair, with 2 enemy destroyers closing in, I think I would have probably done this as well. And battleships sailing down the middle on Two Brothers are a bit like the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects them, unless of course their name's Flambas. Then again, they really should have been expecting this, since there were multiple witnesses on the enemy team that saw him do it, and he is detected. Unfortunately, the kind of scattergun nature of the Key's guns meant that what for any other battleship would have been a guaranteed kill on the enemy Key merely results in a little more damage. See the firing arc of those torpedoes, that was pretty impressive. What's going to be slightly more impressive is what happens to those torpedoes, but for now, enemy carrier spotted. Oof, the Key's been finished off by the Irian. The torpedoes are still going, remember, 10-kilometer range. Also remember, there were no visible targets that he was actually aiming those torpedoes at. Shots out at the cargo. And he's just torpedoed Nognavoy. Yep, that's right, a destroyer just got torpedoed and sunk by a battleship. That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, I know. Now, tank bullet iron is going to have to ignore the cargo for a moment. because a much more serious threat has just popped up. German Tier 7 premium cruiser. I want to call it the Mains, but I'm almost certain it's probably pronounced Mines. At this point, I thought Tank Bullet Iron was doomed. I thought he's going to get torpedoed. The best he can possibly hope for is to maybe kill the mines as he turns away, and then succumb to the torpedoes that the mines must be launching around about now. Because why else would you get this close to an enemy battleship in a cruiser, and then turn broadside on at this kind of range, showing that much skirt? And yet the torpedoes never come. Except they did. He launched them from that side earlier, and then turned to launch them from the other side, and missed with all of them. And then, for reasons known only to himself, turned again in order to not actually launch any torpedoes when he could have just slipped out of sight around the side of the island. So this was effectively a suicide run. It's as if he thought he had torpedoes on 3 sides of the ship. Just... I don't know. And that is a close quarters expert award, and that's not something that's supposed to happen in a Japanese battleship either. Now, he did see the Bismarck just in time in order to turn the nose in and not get completely bitch slapped by the Bismarck's 15-inch guns. So there have already been a number of things that aren't really supposed to happen that we've just seen Tank Bullet Iron do in this particular battle here on Two Brothers. First, you're not supposed to take a battleship down the middle, but, well, he did. Second, battleships aren't supposed to torpedo destroyers. But he did that. He just won a secondary gun battery duel with a German cruiser, and you're not supposed to do that, certainly not in a Japanese battleship. And now he's getting into a secondary gun battery duel with a Bismarck. Now that's usually fine if you're the Bismarck, because the Bismarck is the kind of ship that is actually suited to that. It's very tanky, and it has amazing secondaries. German secondaries, of course, come with quarter caliber high explosive penetration, and they're significantly larger caliber than the 100mm secondaries on the Key, which means that the secondary hits that he's inflicting on the Bismarck are not actually doing a huge amount of damage, other than the fires that they're setting. But the secondary hits that he's taken from the Bismarck are doing damage, and they're setting fires, which makes it all the more remarkable. In fact, watch this. He's deliberately going to hold his fire. Main batteries are loaded and ready to go. Nope. He's going to let the secondaries do the job. A Japanese battleship just won a secondary gun battery brawl with a Bismarck. I'm pretty sure that's not just something that you're not supposed to do. I think it is actually technically against the rules. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it may in fact be the case that if you do win a secondary gun battery brawl with a Bismarck in a Japanese battleship, that is grounds for having your account suspended. But now I know what you're thinking. He's in a big battleship with terrible concealment and there are 2 destroyers on the enemy team. Well, yeah, but this is one of them. See, that's what normally happens when you go down the middle on Two Brothers. Even so, he is capping, which in and of itself would be enough to tell the lone surviving enemy destroyer more or less exactly where he is, and in any case he is spotted by the lone surviving enemy destroyer, and that's not just any old destroyer, that's a Xianyang. That's the Pan-Asian Tier 8, and Pan-Asian destroyers are the natural predator of big, stupid battleships with terrible concealment. Xianyang is armed with deep water torpedoes, the kind that you don't see coming until it's far too late to do anything about it, and hit battleships really, really hard. Unfortunately for the Xianyang, he's been spotted by the Saipan, and while under normal circumstances there'd be very little that a Japanese battleship could do about this sort of thing at that kind of range, unless he gets extremely lucky with his armour piercing, and he didn't. But the final ridiculous thing that's going to happen in this battle is that the torpedoes that he fired blind a minute ago at a target that he didn't even know for sure was there, scored his second battleship torpedo kill on a destroyer in this match, and, in the process, won the game. So if ever further proof were required that even a broken clock can tell the right time at least twice a day, look no further than this particular battle. Tank Bullet Iron and the key. Pretty much doing everything that you're not supposed to do, and yet somehow at the end of it all, still coming out smelling of roses. Hope you enjoyed today's video, folks, and as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.